I turned down a dream promotion in New York just to stay close to her. But one night, I heard her laughing in another man's car right outside our home. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? My name is Ryan Carter, and I am 34 years old. I thought I had everything a man could want: a loving wife, a peaceful home, and a future built on trust. But that night, everything I believed in shattered. When I met Emily, I felt like I had finally found peace. She wasn't flashy or loud. She was gentle, thoughtful, and full of dreams that matched mine. We married young, and when a big promotion came my way in New York, I turned it down. She didn't want city life, and I wanted her more than success. We settled in a quiet town where the air smelled like pine and the nights felt endless. I started working at a local architecture firm, building homes for families who reminded me of what I thought we had: love that felt unshakable. Emily worked at a small marketing agency. Every evening we'd meet for dinner, talk about our day, and plan a future that seemed certain. I thought sacrifice was a part of love. I thought giving up my dream for her happiness made me stronger. But looking back now, I see that I was blind to how much I gave while she quietly drifted away. At first, I didn't notice the changes. Her texts became shorter. Her smiles faded faster. She stopped asking about my projects and started spending longer hours at work. I told myself it was normal. Couples go through phases, right? But love should never feel like begging for attention. Some nights, she'd come home late, apologizing with tired eyes. I'd make her dinner, reheat it twice, then eat alone when she didn't show. I convinced myself she was just busy, chasing her own goals. But deep down, I felt it, a quiet distance growing like a crack in concrete. I remember one night, I came home early to surprise her. I set the table, lit candles, cooked her favorite meal. When she finally walked in, she looked startled, not happy, not touched, just caught off guard. She said she'd already eaten at work. Her tone was flat, her hug felt forced. I told myself she was just tired, but the truth was, love had already begun slipping away. Still, I tried to hold on. I believed that love, once real, could always be repaired. I stayed patient, kind, loyal, hoping the woman I fell for would come back to me. I didn't realize she was already gone, sitting in someone else's passenger seat, laughing like she used to with me. The calm before betrayal always feels safe, but that's what makes it dangerous. The weeks that followed were quiet, too quiet. Emily started coming home late more often, her excuses rehearsed and her tone distant. "Long meeting?" she'd say, tossing her bag on the couch without even looking at me. I told myself it was just work, but deep down, I knew something was slipping away. I tried to bridge the distance, small things at first: flowers on Friday, surprise lunches at her office, late-night drives to the cafe we loved. But she always had an excuse: meetings, reports, deadlines, anything to avoid spending time together. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was confusion. How could someone who once held me like I was her world now flinch at my touch? The laughter between us disappeared first, then the conversations, then the eye contact. She started sleeping on her side of the bed, scrolling endlessly on her phone, smiling at messages I couldn't see. When I asked who she was texting, she snapped, "Just work, Ryan. Stop being paranoid." The word paranoid echoed like a curse. One night, I reached out to hold her hand, and she pulled away like my touch burned her. "You've changed," I said quietly. She didn't answer, just turned off the light. In the darkness, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out where I went wrong. I replayed every memory, searching for the moment love turned into silence. At work, I pretended everything was fine. My colleagues asked about Emily, and I forced a smile, saying she was busy but doing great. But the truth followed me everywhere, in the quiet hum of the office, in the drive home, in the way my house no longer felt like home. One evening, I came back early and saw her standing in the driveway, talking on the phone. Her voice was soft, the way she used to speak to me. When she saw my car, she hung up instantly. "Who was that?" I asked. "A client," she said, her eyes cold and defensive. But I knew her too well. That wasn't how she talked to clients. That was how she talked to someone she cared about. I started noticing the little things: perfume she never wore before, a necklace I didn't recognize, a new playlist filled with romantic songs I'd never heard. She was building a new life in the same space where ours was dying. Still, I didn't confront her. I wanted to believe her love could return, that this was just a phase, a rough patch we'd laugh about one day. But deep down, I could feel it. I was no longer the man she smiled for. I was the man she avoided. And somewhere between her silence and my denial, love became a stranger in our home. It was a cold Friday night. when everything changed. Emily said she had to stay late again for a presentation. I believed her, or maybe I just wanted to. I reheated dinner, waited for her text, and tried not to think about how lonely the house had become. By 10, I gave up and went to bed. But then I heard it, laughter outside. It wasn't just any laughter. It was hers, that light, melodic laugh I'd once fallen in love with. My chest tightened. I pulled the curtain back just enough to see the street. There, under the pale glow of the streetlight, was Emily, sitting in a black sedan, her head tilted back, laughing like she hadn't laughed in months. Next to her sat a bisawama man, younger, maybe late 20s. His hand rested casually on the steering wheel, his grin smug and easy. She looked happy, too happy, happier than I'd seen her with me in a long time. My stomach dropped. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I wanted to rush outside, to demand answers, to scream, but my body wouldn't move. I just stood there, watching, while the truth hit me harder than any punch ever could. I had built my life around her, and she had given her laughter, our laughter, to someone else. After a few minutes, she stepped out of the car, fixing her hair in the window's reflection. The man leaned over and said something that made her smile again. I could tell it wasn't their first time. The kind of comfort doesn't grow overnight. It grows from stolen nights, whispered secrets, and shared lies. She walked toward the door like nothing happened. I rushed to the couch, pretending to be half asleep. When she walked in, she smelled like cheap cologne and cold air. "You're still up?" she asked. I mumbled, "Yeah, just waiting." She kissed my cheek lightly, a mechanical, lifeless gesture, and went straight to the shower. I sat there, frozen, staring at the clock. 11:47 p.m. The sound of running water mixed with the sound of my breaking heart. I wanted to confront her right then, but my mind whispered, no proof, no fight. Still, I knew her laughter would haunt me forever. When she came out, she looked at me like nothing was wrong. "Don't wait up next time," she said softly. I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside something was dying. The last piece of me that believed in her. That night, I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing. The woman sleeping next to me was a stranger, and her laughter, once my favorite sound, had become the cruelest weapon I'd ever heard. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you like this? Comment below. The next morning, I couldn't look at her the same way. Every word she spoke felt rehearsed, every smile forced. She poured coffee like nothing had happened, humming softly. The same woman who'd laughed in another man's car just hours before. I stared at her across the table, wondering how long she'd been lying to me. When she left for work, I followed her car down the street just to see. She didn't notice me, but I noticed everything. How she checked her phone constantly, how her smile appeared every time a message came through. She wasn't going to work early. She was meeting him. I didn't know his name yet, but I could already feel his shadow living in my house. I told myself I'd confront her that night, but when she came home, she acted so normal it made me question my own sanity. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice gentle, like nothing was wrong. I tried to find cracks in her mask, but she was too good at pretending. I almost believed her. Almost. Days passed, and her lies grew thicker. She accused me of being distant, even cold. "You don't look at me the same anymore," she said. The irony made my chest tighten. I wanted to yell, "Because you're not the same woman I married." But I stayed quiet, swallowing the anger like poison. One evening, I gathered the courage to ask, "Is there someone else, Emily?" She froze. For a moment, guilt flickered in her eyes, then vanished. "What? Of course not," she said, laughing nervously. "You're imagining things again." Again, that word cut deep, like I was some paranoid fool who couldn't trust his own wife. That's when the gaslighting began. Every time I asked a question, she twisted it back at me. Every doubt became my fault. "You're insecure," she'd say. "You're suffocating me." I started wondering if I was really losing it. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It makes you doubt your mind. But I wasn't crazy. The truth was right there, hiding behind her fake smiles and late-night work calls. I stopped arguing and started watching. I paid attention to her habits. When she left, when she returned, how she avoided eye contact when she lied. I was done being the trusting husband. I was becoming the quiet observer. One night, as she slept beside me, I stared at her face in the dim light. Once, that face had brought me peace. Now it only brought me question. How could she do this? How could she let me sacrifice everything and still betray me? The cracks were no longer small. They were deep, spreading fast through everything we'd built. I didn't know it yet, but I was standing on the edge of destruction. And the truth waiting below was darker than I could imagine. I woke up that Saturday with one mission: to uncover the truth. No more guessing, no more pretending. I needed to know who he was and what she was hiding behind that perfect smile. So, when she left for another office event, I followed her. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but my heart was steady. She drove across town, far from her workplace. Every turn confirmed my worst fears. Then she stopped, not at a company building or a client's house, but a small cafe on the outskirts of town. I parked a few cars away, watching through the windshield. A few minutes later, he arrived. He was younger, maybe late 20s, messy hair, cheap clothes, and an overconfident grin. The kind of man who thought charm could replace character. I watched as Emily stood up and hugged him. Not the kind of hug you give a friend, but the kind that says everything without words. They sat, laughed, touched hands across the table. I couldn't hear their voices, but I didn't need to. Her face said it all. That soft smile, the one that used to belong to me, was now his. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The woman I'd built my world around had chosen a boy who couldn't even afford a decent shirt. After an hour, they left together. I followed them at a distance as they drove toward a nearby park. Watching them walk side by side, laughing like two teenagers, was torture. Every step they took together shattered another memory of us. The nights we stayed up planning our future. The moments she told me I was her everything. I pulled over and just sat there, breathing hard. I wanted to storm over, to drag the truth out in the open, but I didn't. Not yet. I wanted her to feel comfortable enough in her lies, to think she was safe. Because when I confronted her, I wanted her to see that I knew everything. That night, she came home humming softly, pretending exhaustion. She said it was a long day, kissed my cheek, and headed for the shower. I stood there, staring at the door, realizing she had no idea how close the truth was to catching her. In that moment, I made a silent promise. I wouldn't just expose her lies. I'd rebuild myself so completely that she'd regret ever thinking I was replaceable. Love had made me blind, but betrayal had opened my eyes. And once a man sees the truth, he can never unsee it again. That night, as I lay awake, I whispered to myself, she wanted excitement. She'll get it, just not the kind she expects. The day I stopped caring about her lies was the day I started living again. The pain was still there, sharp, constant, unforgiving, but it no longer controlled me. I had seen the truth, and instead of letting it destroy me, I decided to build something stronger from the ruins she left behind. I packed a bag, moved into a small apartment above an old hardware store, and left Emily with her silence. No big argument, no dramatic goodbye, just absence. She tried to call once, then stopped when I didn't answer. I think part of her expected me to beg, to fight for what we had, but she didn't realize she'd already killed it. At first, loneliness hit hard. Nights felt longer. Meals tasted like nothing. The bed felt too big for one person. But little by little, I filled the emptiness with purpose. I started sketching again. Designs, structures, blueprints for homes I'd never built for her. Each line felt like a piece of my soul returning. One evening, I called Caleb, an old friend who'd always believed in my talent. He said, "Man, why work for someone else? Start your own firm." The idea scared me at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I had spent years building dreams for others. It was time to build my own. I sold my old car, used every dollar I had, and rented a small studio downtown. I called it Carter Design. Simple, personal, mine. The first few months were brutal. I slept in the office sometimes, surrounded by papers and cold coffee. But every struggle reminded me of what I'd survived. Pain had become my motivation. Slowly, clients came. Word spread about my honesty, my precision, my dedication. I wasn't just designing buildings. I was rebuilding myself, one project at a time. People started noticing, and for the first time in years, I felt proud again. Not because of her, but because of me. Then one afternoon, fate played its cruel game. Emily walked into my office. She looked smaller, lost, and tired. "I heard you opened your own firm," she said softly, trying to smile. I looked at her, calm as stone. "Yes," I said. "You always told me I couldn't handle stress. I guess you were wrong." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ryan, I made mistakes." I nodded, replying, "We both did. Mine was trusting you." I didn't yell, didn't curse. I just handed her the truth, cold and clean. She left quietly, her perfume lingering behind like an old ghost. That night, I stood by my office window, watching the city lights reflect off the glass. I realized I no longer wanted revenge. I wanted peace, and I'd already found it. If you were in my place, would you forgive or walk away? Tell me in comments. Months passed, and my life found rhythm again. Work was booming. Clients trusted me, and my name began to carry weight. Each success felt like a brick in the new foundation I was building, one made of self-respect, not sacrifice. I had stopped checking her social media, stopped wondering what she was doing. At least, I thought I had. One evening, as I was leaving my office, I saw her waiting outside. "Emily," thinner, paler, and nothing like the woman I once knew. Her eyes looked hollow, her voice small when she said, "Ryan, can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded. We walked to a nearby park, the same one where I used to take her for Sunday walks. The silence between us felt heavy. Finally, she spoke. "He's gone," she said, her voice trembling. "Evan, he left me. Took my savings, my car, everything." I stayed quiet. She kept talking, her words tumbling out in a flood of guilt. "I made a mistake, Ryan. I thought he loved me. I thought you'd always be there when I was ready to come back." Her words stung, not because I still loved her, but because I finally saw her for what she was. Selfish. She hadn't missed me. She missed the comfort I gave, the stability she threw away. I looked at her and said, "You didn't lose me, Emily. You gave me away." Tears rolled down her face. "I don't expect forgiveness," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." I nodded slowly, letting her words sink into the quiet evening. But forgiveness wasn't mine to give anymore. I had already moved on. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "You taught me something," I said calmly. "Love without respect is a slow death. I died once because of you. I won't do it again." Her lips trembled. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I looked her in the eyes and answered, "No. I pity you, because I found peace, and you're still searching for it." That moment felt like closing a door that had been left open too long. She walked away slowly, glancing back once, as if hoping I'd call her name. But I didn't. I watched her fade into the crowd, just another face in a city full of strangers. Later that night, I got a message from an old client, a new project, the biggest one yet. I smiled, realizing that life rewards those who survive heartbreak with purpose. Regret had finally come knocking, but I didn't need to open the door. I'd already built a new home, and it had no room left for ghosts. A year later, I found myself standing outside the house I once called home. The paint was fading, the garden overgrown, the windows dusty. It looked just like what our marriage had become, neglected and lifeless. I hadn't been there since I walked away, but something inside me needed closure, not anger, not revenge, just peace. I walked around the yard, remembering how we used to sit on that porch, dreaming about the future. I remembered her laughter, her promises, her lies. For the first time, it didn't hurt. It just felt distant, like a story I'd read long ago. Inside, the rooms were empty. My footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors. The walls still carried faint marks from where our photos once hung, reminders of moments that used to mean everything. I realized then that I wasn't angry anymore. I had outgrown the pain, outgrown her, and outgrown the version of myself that needed her love to feel complete. I stood by the window and watched the street below. It was quiet, calm. The same place where I once heard her laugh in another man's car now stood as a symbol of who I had become. Stronger, wiser, and untouchable. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. Just 3 words. "I miss you." I stared at it for a moment, then smiled. Not out of cruelty, but acceptance. I typed back, "Take care," and hit send. That was my final goodbye. No anger, no bitterness, just freedom. When I walked out of that house, I didn't look back. The past had already burned to ashes, and I had built something far greater from them. My firm was thriving. My heart was calm. For the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Later that evening, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city. The light poured through the window, warm and golden. I thought about how life has a strange way of teaching lessons, brutal but necessary ones. Love can lift you higher than anything else, but betrayal teaches you how to fly on your own. I wasn't the man she betrayed anymore. I was the man she would never find again. And that was the truest revenge of all. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "It's over." For the first time, those words didn't feel sad. They felt like peace. Because in the end, some stories don't need revenge. They just need an ending where the wrong person loses you forever. This is how my wife betrayed me. Should I forgive or move on? Tell me in comments. If this story spoke to you, hit like, share it with someone who needs strength today, and subscribe for more true stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and rebirth.